Hi, welcome back. We left off by doing the mood selection UI. We've done all of the requirements here, but I actually added another card so that we can match the slider a little bit closely before we make the commit and push our changes. If we go back to our code here, we see that the slider here doesn't really match the slider from our requirements as closely as I would like it to. I am gonna ignore this blob thing. I don't know how much we can gain from like actually trying to create these paths and whatever. So we're gonna focus on just making the slider match a little bit more closely. And to do that, we're gonna create our own slider. We're gonna comment this slider out for now, and we're going to create a new one. We can call this mood slider. And make the struct down here. It's going to be a view, and we can get started thinking about how we want to code this. If we look at the image, we can see that there are a few different components here. We have what's called the track, which is this like capsule shaped thing down here. And we also have this circle, which is called the thumb, which is on top of the track, and the user can slide this left to right within the confines of the capsule to select a mood. And then we see some labels underneath it, and I think I'm going to not implement those labels. I think it's a little redundant because when a user slides, it will update this label up here. So I think that they're smart enough to realize that, you know, if you're all the way to the left, it's the most unpleasant, and all the way to the right is the most pleasant. I'm gonna ignore it. Okay, and because there are overlapping components to our main component, this is gonna be a Z-stack. We're gonna go ahead and start with the Z-stack, and inside of it, the lowest element is going to be a capsule. And I'm going to give it a frame. The width will be 300. See what that looks like. And then a height of 50. And I'll wait for our canvas to load. Okay. That's a little bit too thick. We'll go with 40. And that looks a lot better. We're noticing that this is opaque and this has like an opacity to it. I'll add an opacity modifier, and it looks pretty light, so I'll say 0.2, and I'm going to change the color to gray. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. The next thing we'll want is our circle for the thumb, and I'll create a frame for that as well. And that's going to be the same size, the same height as the track. So let's actually capture that as a property. And we'll use that here. And we might as well capture the width of the capsule in case we want to change it later. Circle. Okay. And let's rerun this. Nice. The next thing I want to do is kind of like think about the colors. So we see here that the colors of the back of the screen are a little bit different depending on what the user chooses. Let's try to add that. Get rid of this. And I think the way I want to do it is to add a Z stack. I think we can probably like ignore the edges, but it's gonna mess with the padding of the V stack that we have. Background And then we can say something like color dot blue just to see what it looks like. Yeah, so see how it messed with the padding? That's why I want to do a Z-stack. We're going to take this and put it somewhere else. We'll stick that in here, and then we're going to have, actually, we're going to use the selected color, selected mood color. Yep. I like to keep this on its own line, and then we're going to take this and stick it in there. Sweet. I do want it to have an opacity, so we'll add that. Something really light. Good. Now this blue is looking weird, so let's add the selected mood color to the button as well. Good. Nice. So now we have to start moving this thumb. So we're gonna move the circle, which means that we're gonna have to observe some kind of gesture on it. That is exactly what we want. Right, so we have a value and we want to use this value to offset the circle. So let's start storing the X value somewhere. We're gonna have a private var value, and that's gonna be a state variable so that we can modify it inside of the drag gesture. And let's call it X value. And that's going to be a CG float. And then we can set it here. Self.xValue is value.location.x. And where do I have the syntax error? Let's see. I see. We're missing the ending guy here. We actually need to offset it. So let's go ahead and, oops. We want to offset, and we want to offset X by the X value. All right, so let's think about clamping this value so that it can't go under 0 or above the width of the capsule. So because we're saying that the X value is going to start at 0, let's actually make it start at 0. We're going to say that the alignment is leading, and that will make the circle start at 0. And that'll make our calculations a little bit easier. Now we want to think about the clamping part. So I'm going to comment this out, and let's talk about our min-x. Our min-x is going to be a CG float, and that's going to be 0. 0 is the minimum value that it can be. Now, what is going to be our max x? Well, that's going to be the track width minus the size of the circle. So that's going to be right about here, so that the circle can actually reach the end. And then we want to take the mins and maxes of those values. So if we go ahead and just use the code completion, I guess it helped out with getting us the values that we needed, which is we want the maximum for the left-hand side, but then we want the minimum of that for the right-hand side, and that will clamp our values to where they need to be. Sweet. So we got that clamping done. The very next thing I think I want to do is to maybe have this go in a stepwise motion. So if we look at what we're looking at for our design, these will snap to the 5 different values that a user can select from. So that's going to take some math. Let's think about this. We'll create a private let, that's going to be a constant. So that's going to be how many steps we can have. And for us, that's going to be 5. Because we have 5 moods that a user can select from. And then we, again, want to perform some math to see like where a user can land. So we're going to need to modify this a little bit more. The first thing we want to do is calculate the step width. So we want to calculate like the jumps that the circle needs to make. So let's calculate that. So we need to add the step width inside of the body because that's where we can actually access these properties correctly. So we can't add the step width up here because we're using self before self is made. So we actually need to put this in the body somewhere, and then we can actually use it to calculate the step widths. All right, so we got the step width, and now we want to change this x value here in a way that accounts for these steps. So we still want this. This is the clamped value, so let's go ahead and call it the clamped x. And then what we want to do is just snap this clamped x to the nearest mood. And this is how you would clamp it. So you just want to round the clamped x divided by the step width. This is going to get the user's closest step, and it rounds it so that you're not like stopping in the middle of 2 steps. And then this will actually calculate the step back to the x value, and will bring the user actually to the location of the steps. Sweet. Okay, so this is looking really good. Next thing we want to do is maybe update this label here. So first off, it's a little small. Maybe we make this blob a little bit bigger, then we make this font a little bit bigger as well. Okay, blob, let's change that so it looks a little bit better. And then this very unpleasant, let's see, that's here. And let's just make it font, maybe title. Yeah, that's better. Okay. So the next thing we want to do is actually take the mood from the slider and map it back. So we're going to add a new binding bar for the mood, and that's going to be a double, capital B. And one thing I wanted to note is, you know, if you're ever confused about what any of these like property wrappers do, you can click on them and it'll open up the help menu here. So if you're on this tab here, it will tell you all about anything that you have selected. But if you don't want this open, you can also click Alt and click. Alt and click will also bring up this help menu and give you some more information about what you're looking at. I do this a lot to just know what type things are if I forget. Like if I'm further down the code, I can see what type it is. Sweet. So we got this at binding mood, and then we actually want to add it in here. So that's not what I wanted. We want to add the binding to mood value. So that should take this guy, pass it in here, and then we can update mood inside of mood slider. So one more thing, we actually want to set mood down here. So self dot mood is double step. And this probably makes more sense called mood value because it's not the actual mood. So we'll change this for clarity. Awesome. Great. Okay. So we got the binding all set up, and that's actually updating our app now. I think this is a pretty good place to stop for today. We got our UI looking a lot better. Let's go ahead and move over our make slider, match the design. Let's take another look here. So before we mark it as done, let's make it match a little bit more. So that black thumb we can make white now. So we're going to add foreground style color.white. And then maybe we can add a little shadow. And we'll say 1, I think it's like the tiniest little shadow. Yeah, good. Okay. This is a good place to stop. Let's go ahead and commit our changes. We want to CD wherever you have your repo. So for me, it's on my desktop. And then if you do a git status, and thank you, whoever said increase my font size. It's something I forget sometimes to do. Sweet. Okay, so now that I've increased my font size, you can see what I have changed and what I have staged and what I don't have staged. Again, I don't think you need to commit this. I'm just going to add it because I don't really care whether or not it's in my commits. So I did a git add all. Okay, so now that I've done a git status again, you can see that everything is green. We see the files that we've changed when we added the app icon, and then we have this file here, which is where all of our most of our code changes are. And eventually we're going to break this down into separate files, but for now we're going to keep it here for the MVP. Great. And we're going to commit this, so git commit, and then -m to add a message, and this will be making, actually we did a lot more than that, so this is going to be making the main mood view, mood selection view. Now that we've done the git commit, now we want to do a git push. All right, and now everything will be up on GitHub. If we go to our mood tracker repo and take a look, we see that we just made this commit. Great. All right, and I'll see you next time for saving the daily mood, and we can move this over to done. Sweet. See you next time.